experiment. I've got my white fabric. Let me adjust this so I can see things a bit better. So I've made a few more. I'm going to put, no, let's put them all in. So this is a pot, a small saucepan of just normal cold water. And I've actually, next to me, I've got a full kettle of water. So I'm just going to knock the kettle on while we're doing this bit. And all I want to do is get my pieces of fabric nice and wet. And the reason I'm doing this is because we're going to dye these pieces of fabric. And if you put dry fabric into what we call a dye bath, the water doesn't go all the way around the fabric. So I'm going to add my little extra bits that we made. So what I just need to do is get them in some water and just make them nice and damp. Right, so that's that done. Let's squeeze out the water. And actually, it doesn't matter about getting creases on the fabric, because that might give some nice patterns on the fabric. So that's the dye bath, that's the wet stage. I'm gonna put that pan, right, that pan is now waiting for the hot water to come. I'm just gonna see what we've got. Right, actually, I'll take away my chopping board. And you can see it better. Oh, a piece of there. So they're nice and they're not soaking, they're just nice and damp. Now some I'm just going to put in the dye bath just as they are, and others I might do things to them. So this one I'm going to roll up, and you can do whatever you like with these. Some people wrap them around coins or keys, and I'm just going to use a spare bit of one of the little offcuts I made to knock that up. Let's see what we can do with this one. Let's just crunch that one up, and let's add another one to it and wrap that up. Let's see what that does. There you go. And I'll leave that one plain. And what shall I do with this one? What shall we do? I might twist it. I wonder what happens if we twist it. And this is what dyeing is all about, is just wondering what would happen. So this one I'm going to twist and see what happens with that. I don't know, because I normally dye wool. I'm not a cloth dyer. I'm just going to wrap that in there and just wrap that around. It may not stay, but who knows. So I have my untouched fabric, I have the one we twisted, I have the one we rolled, and I have the one we scrunched. And once the kettle is on, we can go to the next step. Okay, the kettle's boiled. Oh, I've got my tea bags here. Now, here's another warning. I'm using Yorkshire tea, which is a very strong tea. So you might need more tea bags than I'm using. So into the saucepan, I'm going to put 3. I've got my pot of tea, my cup of tea here. Let's just pour the water in for that, because why not? And then let's pour the water in with the dye bath. There we are. Let's get my tea stirred. And waste not, want not. Put that tea in there as well. Add my milk to my tea only. And put that in the fridge. There, that's the most difficult bit made. A nice cup of tea. Right, just put the, so we're just gonna, when you make tea, you always have to stir it, so we're just stirring it. Give it a couple minutes stirring, and then we'll put it on the hob. You can see it's already quite dark. And just give it a few more minutes. Okay, so it's been stirred for a little while. Let's get my little tea dish. Dump out the tea. One, two, three, four. There we are, there's our tea bags on our little tea stand. Right, now we need to add the fabric. So the straight piece, you can see already, it's got some colour in it. We just need to get that in there. And these are the other ones. Right, and now I'm going to put it on the hob, let it boil, bring it back to the boil, and then let it simmer. And just keep it simmering for about 20 minutes, and then I'll see you after that's done. So here I am. My dye pot or my dye bath is on the stove on a full heat. It's just about boiling. You may notice I've added the tea bags back in because I sat here and I suddenly thought, I wonder what the difference would be if I put the tea bags back in and left them in the dye pot. And I'm wondering if where the tea bags touch the fabric, whether it would make an even better difference. So we'll see what happens. But that's the whole point of things like this, is you can experiment. So maybe instead of tea, you could try onion skins, avocado, red cabbage is quite good, turmeric's good. Just remember, if you're like with tea bags, they don't need straining. There we go, it's boiling now, so I'll turn it down. But if you're going to do something like red cabbage, you're going to need to get the dye out of the cabbage first by boiling that, and then strain the water and put the water back on without the cabbage, because you don't want to be picking cabbage out of your fabric. Okay, so I hope that helps, and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so now we're at the least interesting part of my kitchen, the sink. The dye is done. Let's make sure the hob is off, and let's tip it out. Rinse that out. Now, if you enjoy dyeing fabric and you think you'd like to start getting into the more exotic fabric dye things, and you start to use chemicals, you're going to need your own pan specifically for dyeing. and not use a pan that you use for food. But if I'm only dyeing with tea bags, well, tea isn't gonna cause any trouble. But I do have a massive pan for dyeing wool, but when I dye wool, I tend to dye it in kilograms, so it's huge amounts of wool that I dye, and that was too big a pan to use just for this bit of fabric. So you might have noticed there as well that I did an I wonder, and I wrapped a tea bag in this piece halfway through the dyeing. But this is the great thing of dyeing, is don't grab hot tea bags. So I'm now going to turn on the cold tap and see what we've got. So that's one we twisted. So what we're doing is just rinsing out any dye that hasn't stuck to the fabric, and also we're cooling down the fabric because we're still playing with very hot water, so be very careful doing all this. That should be alright. There you go. Taps off, and let's go to the table and see what we've got. Right, here we are. Here's our fabrics. Let's see what we've got. There you go. So I think is that the one we scrunched up? So you can see. Hang on, let's get a bit of light on the subject, as they say. What's better? There, we'll have it there. So that's the one we scrunched up. I don't know what that is. Could be a bit of tea. But you can, that's made a nice little faded effect. That's quite nice. I like that it's subtle. Sometimes you get really big contrasts. Or is this the one we scrunched? This is the amazing thing, is you just don't know. I think this is the one we scrunched up. That's quite nice. And then we have these little strands of thing. We'll keep them as well, because it all helps. There's another strand. This is a little bit of fabric. Is that the one we wrapped in tea? Yeah. And then, oh, this is the one we rolled up. You can see the roll lines in the fabric. That's nice. What's this light one? Oh, look at that one. That's nice. I like that as well. That's the one we twisted, because you can see the twist lines in it there, and then you can see that's where we folded it over to keep it nice and tight in the bath. And I think this is the one that we didn't do anything to, so that's just given us a nice colour. There you go. So what I'm going to do now is hang them up to dry, and then when they're dry I can iron them and see what they come out with. When I'm ironing it, I'm going to put a tea towel on top, just so that if there is any residue dye in the fabric, it doesn't affect my iron. So I'm going to put a tea towel on top of it and dry it, iron it, and see what we get. Okay, we're back in my craft room at the scruffy desk, and here is all the fabric that we dyed, and I've ironed it, it's dry, and let's see what we've got. So we've got these nice little bits. Look at those, that nice little bit there. It's cute, it's interesting. There's some nice bits where the tie is caught. There's a nice evenly pieced dye. You see, from one dye bath we get so many different shades. It's really interesting. I like that. This is the one that was just left normal. You see on one side there's a darker patch there, and it's worth looking at both sides of your fabric to choose which one you like. I'll put that over there. Oh, I like this one. This was the one, was this the one we scrunched up? I can't remember. Well, that's nice, of all these little patterns on it. And I like that. That's the one we rolled up. That's the one we twisted. It's quite nice. And this is the one we scrunched up. Right. So so that's how you dye it. I'm gonna just choose one that I like to work on. I think I like this one actually. So I'm going to work on that one first, and let's see what we can do. Just before I go, I'm going to show you one of the tools. Well, I like to do crafts that everyone can do without spending money, because things are tight for everyone. So let's go back and show you. On the previous video I did a tutorial on making the template, and I'm just gonna, instead of using the pencil, I'm going to use this little tool, this little pen. This is called the Friction Pen by Pilot. It comes in a variety of colours. The great thing about these pens, I'm just going to draw my template on. This little board that I'm working on is actually safe to iron on, so it's like a little portable iron. So, and the great thing about friction pens is they disappear, the ink disappears when you iron on it. So you can draw your pattern and then iron over it and the ink disappears, which is great. So just let that cool down a bit before I redraw that line. We just roughly. But what I would also say, if you're using coloured dyes, coloured fabrics, especially red, is just test the pen out on another piece of fabric, on a tiny little bit of fabric, because sometimes the ink still shows on the fabric. So I'm just cutting that something a bit smaller. There we go. I'm going to leave a gap there to fold over. There we are. And this is my working area. So if you're wondering what I'm doing, check out the previous video. So this is the top of my flag, and this is the bottom. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you dye lots of amazing fabrics, and let's see what we can all come up with.